All right, so with civics and government today, we're just going to talk about a couple basic things. And today we're really going to focus on just types of government. So this would normally be the question or the time of the class when I would open up the floor to everyone and ask what is government or what is the purpose of government. And since I can't hear any of you and can't see any of you, that wouldn't be a very good discussion. So I'll try to kind of do my best to pretend that we're having a great discussion. But government has existed as long as there has been civilization. So when people have lived together in any amount of numbers, there has to be some kind of system in place to keep order, maintain safety, maintain law and order. So government may not be everyone's favorite thing. It may be something people love to complain about, but the bottom line is that some form of government is a necessity when it comes to civilized life and kind of the world we live in. As you can see on my screen, there are lots of different types of governments. So governments all over the world, there are tons of different forms of government, some of the oldest forms of government. And I'll just kind of go through this from the top, and I apologize ahead of time. I know I do this in person, and I apologize for being boring, but I'm sure this will be especially boring, so I'll try to make it as painless as I possibly can. But just kind of running through these real briefly. A monarchy. So a monarchy is when we have kings and queens, and they are selected by succession. And so that means essentially that they are destined to be king or queen or ruler based on family lineage, right? So there's no elections. You don't elect the king. The king just is the son of the old king, right? Or something like that, right? So monarchy, kings and queens. It also says pharaohs up there. So like ancient Egypt had a form of monarchy. Parliament, a constitutional monarchy. This would be, and I'll pull up a map here in a little bit of some countries that have different forms of government, but a parliament would be like England or Great Britain, where there is a combination of leadership by succession, appointments, and elections. So in other words, there might be a king and queen, but on the other hand, there is also a parliamentary system or a group of elected officials that are actually running the government, as the king or queen is essentially the cultural leader. Autocracy is when you have rule by a single person. So autocracy can essentially be a dictatorship. They are the same thing, essentially, but an autocracy is just kind of a broader term, whereas a dictatorship is usually negative in context, right? When you hear the word dictator, you're not like, oh, yeah, I live in a dictatorship, that's awesome. But it's a form of autocracy, so a form where you have one person in control of everything, but typically dictatorships are usually maintained through force and oligarchy. An oligarchy is where you have a small group of a few people that run everything. So I don't know if I have a great example of that, but essentially where in a dictatorship or an autocracy, there's just one person with ultimate control. In oligarchy, there might be a small group of people that have all the control. So outside of that group, nobody has any power, all within that one group. And then moving on down the line here, an aristocracy is the rule of an elite class. So think like medieval times, basically, or medieval Europe, the Middle Ages, where you have lords and barons, and essentially the people with the money and are the people with the power, right? So the wealthy people are in control of deciding how to run the government. And anarchy, you're probably familiar with the word anarchy, right? But it is essentially no formal government. And here it says limited government, and it varies in extremes from democracy to chaos, right? But essentially, when we hear anarchy, we're using that word to describe no functional government, right? There isn't a government mandating anything. So around the world, that may be the case, but typically there is always some form of government. But in the instance of lacking any form of government, anarchy would be the term. And then the last few here, and again, sorry for just running down the list, but I'm going to go through this and we'll look at a map and I'll point some stuff out, and then we'll spend the last little bit doing a few practice questions. So a theocracy. So theocracy is where the church is in charge, or the rule of the church. So a lot of times, again, in the Middle Ages or in Europe, hundreds of years ago, you have situations where the Vatican or the Pope and things like that are in control of things, or the Church of England. Any situation where you actually have the church serving not only as the religious leaders, but also running the government, or deciding how to run the government. And then the last two down here, confederation and democracy. Confederation is where we have a loose alliance of states without any central powers. So when we talk about U.S. history and we get into talking about how the United States government was formed, we were actually initially formed as a confederation. In other words, we had 13 states and they had an alliance and called themselves the United States of America, but they didn't have a central government overseeing initially. And we then changed that and ended up setting up the government we have now, which is the last one, a democracy where you have the rule of the people. And that essentially means, because you and I aren't out ruling anything, as much as we'd like to think we are, we're not. But the rule of the people essentially means the power lies in us, the citizens, because of the ability to vote and elect officials, right? And vote for laws or vote against laws. So in democracy, you have elections deciding things. And then down at the very bottom, there are two forms of democracy, right? Representative democracy and a direct democracy. So in a representative democracy, citizens aren't voting on every single law all the time. Whereas in a direct democracy, laws are voted upon by a council of all citizens, right? So if we have 325 million people or whatever, if we were a direct democracy, every one of those people would be voting on every decision that was made. But we're not a direct democracy. We are a representative, where we have citizens that vote to elect officials to then do things for us, right, on our behalf, hopefully. Right? So we elect officials to go to Washington, D.C., or even go to Olympia, or go to Spokane County, depending on the levels of government. We'll get to that in another lesson, right? But we elect people, hopefully have our interests in mind, and then enact and make laws. We don't actually do any of the making or creating laws, right? We might vote on certain state laws or federal laws, but we aren't typically doing that on a daily basis. All right. So, sorry that was long, but here. So, kind of the last slide and where I'll end us before I go over a couple of practice questions. This is just a map to kind of show you all the different types of governments that are out there across the world. So, blue are full presidential republics, another way of saying a democracy, right, where we have presidents that are elected. Some of the other common colors you see, pink are constitutional monarchies. So you have kind of the umbrella of Great Britain and all of their countries, so Canada, Australia, so on and so forth. The yellow are presidential parliamentary systems, so something similar to a democracy, but basically where we have a parliament or elected officials in a group, along with either a president or a prime minister. And so you can see some of the other rarer types of governments. So the black military dictatorships. So again, there are some of those out there. There are absolute monarchies where you have a king or queen in true control of something. And then you can kind of see some other different things. And I won't kind of point out everything because it's not critical. And none of this is stuff that you really need to memorize. I just kind of wanted to show everyone there's a lot of different types of government out there. And there isn't necessarily one way to rule a country. Right? There's lots of effective ways to go. Let me make sure that this, okay, I'll put this up. Just kind of a little breakdown of who's in charge or who's ruling. So in an anarchy, you have nobody in charge or no one ruling. If you have one person in charge, you have a monarchy or a dictatorship. A few people would be an oligarchy. And then everyone is essentially where you have a democracy, where you have everyone in that country or that governing body has some amount of power. So with that, we'll pick up here tomorrow, the constitutional government, but I want to pull up a new screen. So let me pull up a couple questions, and I will. I'm gonna pull up some questions, and I guess let me, before I get too carried away, let me all right, so let me just make sure everyone, if anybody has any questions, again, I kind of want to just take a breather because we're figuring this out as we go also, right? So I don't have this dialed in by any means. So I want it to be as useful as possible for students. So again, just to reiterate, if you do have any questions, I can't hear you, I can't see you, please respond in the chat bar. So if you've got questions, and Caleb will be assisting us in our classes and is always there monitoring for any questions. So make sure if you have a question, speak up in the chat and we can hopefully answer it. Caleb also asked me to remind everyone to message us in the chat. So if you're attending class now and you're a student, mention it in the chat so that we know who you are and that we can actually count that you attended a class, right? Because without physical classes, you have to have some form of attendance. So please, if you're a student and you're listening to this, please respond to Caleb in the chat just to let us know that you're there and that you're watching. All right. With that said, let me pull up some practice questions. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. We'll get a couple practice questions in, and then we'll call it a day. If you came in late, or I'm seeing a text on the chat. If you came in late, these will be hopefully, I don't know how quickly, but they will be uploaded onto our Facebook page and or YouTube, depending on how that works. You can always check in on old lessons. And then hopefully if you need any materials, you can always email any of us or contact us through the website. So we just kind of want to try to be as helpful as we can. But again, bear with us. We're kind of figuring this out as we go. All right, so let me share my screen again. Okay, I want to. All right, so let me get practice questions in. I don't know how clearly you can see that. Read that okay, Caleb?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. It says the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution.
No, that shouldn't be it. Do you see the practice questions?
Oh, no.
Okay, let me try again. I'm glad I unmuted you. There we go. This should work.
Yep, that's it.
All right, perfect. All right, there we go. That's what I meant to have. All right, so I want to end this probably by 11:45. I don't want to have these classes drag on too long. But if you go ahead and take a look at the first question, it just says to match each choice in the box corresponding to the form of government that best matches the description. So the options are direct democracy, monarchy, representative democracy, and aristocracy. Okay, so I'll give everyone just a minute, and I don't want to have radio silence for too long. Just kind of look through your options. So down here, your choices are country A, country B, country C, country D. Laws are made and administered. Anyway, I won't read all of them. But go ahead and read through those and just see if you can mix and match them to the appropriate form of government. And in a couple minutes, we'll go over. So I'll just give everyone just a second, and I'll be quiet. And while I'm doing that, I'll go ahead and check the chat out and make sure if there's any questions I can answer them. Timer on. Sorry about that. All right. Well, whether that was enough time or not, there's only so long I can sit in total silence. I feel weird. So if I'm rushing you, I apologize. But again, you can go back and kind of look through this on your own, and once we've posted it up. But again, hopefully everyone can see these and read these clearly. But we're just kind of matching the multiple choices with the 4 different types of government that they've given us here in the question. So number 1 is direct democracy, monarchy, representative democracy, and aristocracy. So a direct democracy would, what do you think? Country A, country B, country C, or country D? So a direct democracy, remember, is where laws are made by the vote of all citizens. Everybody in a direct democracy votes on every issue. So country D is our direct democracy. Right? A monarchy, and if you remember from the beginning of class, a monarchy is a form of government where you have kings or queens that are appointed to that post by succession. In other words, through bloodline. Right? So if your dad was king,
So
you're in
A?
line. Oh, hello? Oh.
Hey.
Oh, sorry, I'm going to mute you. Don't take it personal, though. All right, and just as a reminder, I am keeping all the audio and video off only for privacy issues so that when we post things back up, we don't have any students' voices or faces up on them. So, but again, if you do have questions, make sure you ask via the chat. So let's see. So monarchy, again, kings and queens. The giveaway there would be the word king, right? So country B, laws are made by a sovereign king and are subject to no review. So country B would be a monarchy. And then the last 2, representative democracy. And again, the United States is kind of the biggest example of a representative democracy where you have citizens electing officials to then make laws for them. So that would most closely match country C, right? Laws are made by Congress, an elected group of representatives. So elected group of representatives is the key there. So even if you look at that question and you're not sure what Congress is, you think, first of all, elected group means we're probably talking about a democracy if someone's being elected. Then a group of representatives are the people that are doing the representing, right? And then the last one, aristocracy, by process of elimination would be the last one left. Country A, laws are made and administered by lords who inherit land and titles. All right, so there's that one. Let me look through here, and we're not going to go through and do all these questions, but I do want to do a couple of them. Let's see. Okay. So let's see here. There's a couple good examples here. I guess, let's just do a couple of these. So let's do number 2. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. Okay. So question number 2 here. Which of the following can be inferred about the founding fathers of the United States? So if you want to just answer this question and ignore my talking, just go ahead and kind of do this on your own, but I'll talk a little bit about kind of what I would, if this was, in person and I was in class, I like to do a lot of practice questions, just to kind of point out what's going to be on the test, but more important than that is what questions are going to look like, right? What do you need to actually know, right? Because one thing I always tell everyone is with social studies, it's not necessarily about how great your knowledge of social studies is. It's essentially a reading test with social studies content, right? So the more you can familiarize yourself with the types of questions that are on the test, the better off you're going to be. It's not necessarily about memorizing a bunch of facts and data, right? So this question here is pretty straightforward, but again, it could be challenging if you don't know what inferred means. Vocabulary is a big part of the social studies. Which of the following can be inferred about the founding fathers of the United States? Inferred means what can be assumed based on things we know, right? If something is inferred, it's not directly stated. There's nothing that's directly saying, right? So we're just trying to look and see which of these 4 options might we assume to be true about the founding fathers of the United States. So we'll kind of run through all of our options here. And again, one little just tidbit, and again, I know I'm talking too much, especially because I have no one to shut me up. But again, one thing with the test, almost all the questions are going to be multiple choice. Not all of them. There's lots of other different types of questions. The majority of questions are multiple choice. So I can't emphasize enough. Get to a question that you're not sure of, right? Always try to read all your options and see if you can't eliminate 1 or 2 that are just throwaway answers, right? And it seems like common sense, but so many times if you do that, you're going to make the question so much easier, and you're going to get more confidence, right? Because sometimes it's overwhelming to look at a question and not know what the answer is, right? But just because you don't know the answer right away doesn't mean you can't figure it out, right? And when it comes to the GED test, a lot of success is in how can you be a successful tester, right? So with this question here, say you don't have any idea what the answer is, okay? Let's just read through them first. A, they sought to establish the power of the King of England in the United States. B, they were concerned about protecting the rights of individuals. C, they argued that the United States should adopt a system of direct democracy. Or D, they thought representatives from the United States should sit in Parliament. Okay. So, assuming I'm a student that doesn't have any idea what the answer to this question is, I still want to try to figure it out because it's in my benefit on the GED test, right? So, the first thing I look at is A. Okay, and again, you have to have some background knowledge, right? But if you think about the United States and where we came from, we were once colonies of England, right? We were ruled by the King of England. And we rebelled against the King and wanted to become our own country. So, A, they sought to establish the power of the King of England in the United States strikes me as a pretty bad option, right? That doesn't seem right at all. The United States wanted to do the exact opposite. The United States wanted to kick the King of England out of the United States, right? A is I'd throw it away, right? A is not right. B, they were concerned about protecting the rights of individuals. Okay, that sounds pretty good. but maybe I don't. Maybe I'm not sure. Let's keep it. Let's keep it for now. Let's skip it. C. They argued that the United States should adopt a system of direct democracy. So again, if you remember what we talked about earlier, there are two types of democracy: representative democracy, direct democracy. Direct democracy is where everyone votes on every issue. The United States is not direct democracy. So I would throw C at, right? They argued that the United States should adopt a system. It doesn't make sense based on what I know about the United States and the fact that it's a representative democracy. So let's say it's between B and D. B, they were concerned about protecting the rights of individuals. D, they thought representatives from the United States should sit in Parliament. Okay, so most people, I'm guessing, read D and don't really know what the heck they're talking about, right? So for that reason alone, if you're down to two, just go with your gut and what makes the most sense. And to me, B makes the most sense. They were concerned about protecting the rights of individuals, right? That's one of the key principles that our country was founded on. And in this case, it'd be the right answer. So I realized that I kind of took more time than I wanted on that question. So we'll end on that, but I just kind of wanted to go through and really break down a question. I don't always do that, but I wanted to just do it this time, especially because I can't see or hear you. And I just really do want to impress upon you how important like reading skills are to social studies. That's really all I can say, is that it's much more important that you know the types of questions and kind of have some skills to be able to solve those questions than it is worrying about, do I know everything about US history? Do I know everything about economics? Those things aren't as important, right? It's just practicing a bunch of questions. So I'll leave everybody with that. If you do have any questions, I'll be back again tomorrow, 11:15. You can always email me, or you can always send a message through the website. If you have any questions or you want materials, practice test codes, or anything like that. Again, we are trying our very best to be accessible as much as possible, right? Because it doesn't feel like anyone's accessible right now, but we do really want to reach out. And if you have questions or concerns, or you feel like we're not addressing those questions and concerns, just find a way to let us know, because we really want to make this as beneficial as possible for everyone. So with that, I'll leave you. I believe we have a reading class scheduled at 12:15, and then I will be back again at 1:15 with a science class, so I hope to see some of you there. Until then, I will talk to you all later. Thank you very much. All right, I'm signing out.